The small garage stood at the corner of a quiet street, its paint peeling, and the sign above it almost faded. Inside, a mechanic worked from early morning until late night, covered in grease and sweat, yet never once complaining. His life was not easy, but he carried on with patience. Every day he woke up before the sun, tied his worn-out boots, and walked into the little garage that smelled of oil and metal. He knew his work was the only thing keeping his life moving forward. Even if the money was never enough, that he had no luxury in his life. His clothes were simple, his meals were plain, and his bed was just a thin mattress placed in a small rented room behind the garage. The sound of cars honking outside was his daily alarm, and the clinking of tools was the music he heard every day. But despite all this, his heart was soft. He never turned anyone away. Sometimes a poor man would come with an old car, barely running, and even if the person had little money, the mechanic would still repair it. He believed kindness mattered more than profit. There were days when he barely earned enough to eat. Some evenings he would sit on a stool, wiping his hands with an old rag, staring at the empty garage, and wondering if his hard work would ever bring him a better life. Yet he never lost hope. He believed one day things might change, though he did not know how. What kept him going was the thought that every little act of honesty and kindness would come back in some way. People in the neighborhood respected him. They knew he was not just fixing cars, he was fixing problems for families who couldn't afford to pay big workshops. If someone's car broke down on the way to work, he would rush out and help, even if it meant skipping his own meal. Children often waved at him as they passed by, because they had seen him help their parents many times. He never demanded full payment when he knew someone was struggling. He would simply say, "Pay me when you can," and then move on to the next job. But his kindness did not hide the truth of his own struggles. At night, when the garage closed and silence filled the air, he would sit alone thinking about unpaid bills. He would count the coins left in his pocket and wonder how to stretch them for another week. Sometimes the lights in his room flickered because the electricity bill was overdue. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, but he never let it show during the day. To the world, he carried a quiet strength. On rainy nights, water leaked from the roof of the garage, dripping onto the floor. He would place an old bucket to catch the drops, then return to his workbench, tightening bolts and fixing engines under the dim light. His hands were rough from years of hard labor, but his touch on every machine was careful, almost gentle. Every car he worked on left in better shape, not because of expensive equipment, but because he gave it everything he had. Inside his heart was a silent dream. He wished he could have a better garage with proper tools and space, maybe even an assistant to help him. He wished to earn enough to live without constant fear of running out of money. But those dreams stayed locked inside him, hidden beneath the layers of daily struggle. What mattered to him more than dreams was doing right by others. There was a warmth in his eyes that people noticed. Even when he was tired, even when his stomach was empty, he would smile at customers and assure them their cars would run again. Some wondered why he was so generous when life gave him so little in return. But he never questioned it. He believed that a person's worth was not measured by what they owned, but by how they treated others. The garage, though small and shabby, became a place of trust. People came not only for repairs, but also for comfort, knowing they would be treated fairly. For him, every day was another chance to help someone, another chance to make life a little easier for another person. And though he did not know it yet, one simple act of kindness was about to change everything in his life. That evening the sky was heavy with dark clouds, and rain poured down on the quiet street where the mechanic's garage stood. The sound of water splashing on the roof mixed with the noise of distant traffic. The mechanic was just finishing up his work on an old van when he heard the slow sputter of a car engine outside. Moments later, a sleek luxury car rolled to a stop near the garage. Its headlights cut through the rain, and steam rose from under the hood. The mechanic wiped his hands on his rag and stepped outside. Standing next to the car was a woman holding an umbrella. She looked worried and a little uneasy. Her clothes suggested she was not from this neighborhood. She glanced at the old garage sign, as if doubting whether this place could help her expensive car. For a moment she hesitated, but the mechanic's calm presence made her feel she could at least ask, "Is there any chance you can take a look at this?" She asked, her voice almost lost under the sound of rain. The mechanic nodded without hesitation. He did not ask about money or details. He simply motioned for her to bring the car inside. With careful hands, he pushed open the garage doors and guided her to park. The car's engine gave a weak sound before it died completely. He leaned over the hood, lifted it, and quickly got to work. The woman stood nearby, still under her umbrella, though the roof now sheltered her. She watched him work, surprised by how focused he was. Despite the cold air and water dripping from his jacket, he didn't complain once. He grabbed tools, checked wires, adjusted parts, and kept his eyes on the engine like he was handling something precious. She offered to pay extra for the trouble, but he shook his head. "It's fine. Let's just get this car running again." His voice was steady. Without pride or arrogance. Hours passed slowly, the rain never stopping. The mechanic's hands moved with determination, even though his body was tired from the long day. The woman noticed how his garage was poorly lit, with tools scattered around, and how the roof leaked in one corner. Yet he worked as if nothing else mattered except fixing her car. His dedication touched her in a way she hadn't expected. Finally, after tightening the last bolt and wiping his brow, the mechanic stepped back. "Try it now," he said. She climbed inside and turned the key. The engine started smoothly, purring like new. Her face lit up in relief. She looked at him, astonished at how quickly and skillfully he had solved the problem. "How much do I owe you?" She asked again, this time firmly, wanting to pay him well. The mechanic shook his head and gave a small smile. "Just pay what feels right. I don't charge extra for helping someone in need." Her eyes softened at his words. She had met many people who looked at her and saw only wealth, status, or opportunity. But this man didn't know who she was, and he didn't care. He simply helped because that was who he was. For the first time in a long while, she felt the weight of genuine kindness. She reached into her bag and pulled out some money, but he gently refused the large bills. "Keep it simple," he said. "Enough to cover the cost, nothing more." She handed him a smaller amount, and he accepted with a nod, not realizing how deeply his actions had affected her. Before leaving, she paused at the door of the car and looked back. The mechanic was already cleaning his tools, ready for the next day's work. She studied him for a moment, the tired but honest face, the worn clothes, the small garage that barely held together, and something stirred in her heart. She drove off into the rain with a quiet thought. This man deserved far more than he had. What the mechanic did not know was that this stranger was not just any woman stranded on a rainy night. She was someone with the power to change his life forever. And her decision was already forming in her mind as she drove away into the storm. The next morning, the garage smelled of oil and gasoline as usual. The mechanic rose early, dragging his tired body into another day of work. His hands were sore from the long night before, yet there was no time to rest. Old cars lined the street, waiting for his attention, and customers trickled in one by one. He worked quietly, with the same steady patience that kept him going each day. As he bent over an engine, the memory of the woman from the night before came back to him. Her car had been different from what usually showed up at his small garage. The polished paint, the smooth leather seats, it was the kind of car that belonged in places he had never been, places filled with people far richer than he could imagine. He didn't think much of it though. To him, a broken engine was just a machine that needed fixing, no matter who owned it. Meanwhile, somewhere across the city, the woman sat in her office on the top floor of a tall glass building. Her desk overlooked the city skyline, a view that symbolized her success. She was a CEO, known for her sharp mind and business strength. But as she stared out at the streets below, her thoughts drifted back to the mechanic. She remembered how he never once asked who she was or demanded a high payment. He hadn't even blinked at the sight of her car. Instead, he worked through the storm without complaint, refusing her offer of extra money. His words echoed in her ears. "I don't charge extra for helping someone in need." It struck her deeply because her world was full of people who wanted something from her: investors, clients, employees, all expecting favors, deals, or benefits. Rarely did anyone treat her as just a person in need. But last night, she had experienced something rare: pure kindness, untainted by greed. She leaned back in her chair and thought about the shabby garage, the dripping roof, and the man's worn-out boots. For someone with so little, he had given so much. A quiet determination grew in her heart. She decided she would not let his kindness go unnoticed. Back at the garage, the mechanic worked through the day as if nothing unusual had happened. To him, it was just another night, another broken car. He had no idea that the woman he had helped was watching his every move from afar. Not physically, but in her mind she was replaying every detail. She was already planning something that would change his life forever. By the evening, when the sun dipped low and the streetlights flickered on, the mechanic sat on his stool, wiping sweat from his brow. His earnings from the day were modest, barely enough to cover expenses. He sighed, counting the small bills in his hand. Yet despite the struggle, he felt no regret for helping the woman. He would do it again, no matter the cost. Far away, the woman finished her meeting with her board members, her decision firm. She would visit the mechanic again, but not as a stranded driver. This time she would return as who she truly was. She wanted him to see her not as a customer, but as someone who valued what he stood for. The night grew quiet in the little neighborhood. The mechanic closed the garage doors and stepped inside his small room behind the shop. He lit a small lamp and sat by the window, watching the rain clouds drift away. He didn't know it yet, but the kindness he gave so freely was about to come back to him in a way he never imagined. While he drifted to sleep, exhausted from another long day, the woman sat at her desk making arrangements. She picked up her phone and gave instructions to her assistant. Tomorrow she would go to that small garage again. Not to get her car fixed, but to repay a man whose heart was richer than any fortune. The morning sun rose slowly, painting the street in a soft golden light. The mechanic had already opened the garage, his sleeves rolled up, his hands busy with a stubborn old car that refused to start. He was used to such mornings, quiet, simple, and filled with the rhythm of turning bolts and checking engines. To him, it was just another day of survival. But outside, the day was far from ordinary. A long black luxury car rolled down the street and stopped right in front of the small garage. Its polished body gleamed under the sunlight, drawing the attention of passers-by. The mechanic looked up, wiping the sweat from his forehead, surprised to see such a car in front of his shabby shop. The doors opened, and out stepped the same woman he had helped in the stormy night. Only this time, she looked different. Gone were the simple clothes and umbrella. She was dressed in a sharp, elegant outfit that spoke of power and authority. Her presence commanded respect. Behind her, a few assistants followed, carrying folders and standing close as if she was someone very important. The mechanic froze for a moment, unsure what to make of this sudden scene. She walked toward him with a smile. "Do you remember me?" she asked gently. The mechanic nodded, though still puzzled. "Your car. It was broken last night." She laughed softly. "Yes, and you fixed it when I needed it most. But what you didn't know is that I'm not just a stranger. I'm the head of a company here in the city." Her words struck him like a bolt of lightning. He blinked, trying to process what she had just revealed. Around them, curious neighbors stopped to watch. They whispered among themselves, shocked at the sight of an elegant woman stepping into the dusty little garage, speaking with the poor mechanic as if he was someone important. The mechanic's voice trembled slightly as he spoke. I didn't know. I only did what I could. That's exactly what makes you special, she said. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't care about what I had. You helped me because you're a kind man, and that is rare. Her assistant stepped forward, handing her a folder. She opened it and placed it on the workbench inside the garage. Papers spilled out documents, plans, and even sketches. The mechanic looked at them with confusion. I wanted to come here today, she continued. Not to get my car fixed, but to fix something else. You've spent your life helping others, working hard with almost nothing. Today, I want to help you. The mechanic's eyes widened, his heart pounding. He had never expected such words, especially from someone like her. She looked around the garage, the cracked walls, the leaking roof, the broken tools. This place doesn't match your heart. You deserve better. The moment was overwhelming. The mechanic felt like the ground beneath him had shifted. He had lived in shadows, unnoticed by the world, yet here was a powerful woman standing in his small garage, offering him something he never dared to dream of. Why me? He asked softly. She smiled warmly. Because you showed me kindness when you had nothing to gain. That means more to me than all the money in the world. And people like you deserve to be lifted, not left behind. The assistants began to explain plans of renovating his garage, equipping it with modern tools, and even expanding it into a proper workshop. The mechanic listened in silence, unable to find words. His heart swelled with emotions, gratitude, disbelief, and hope all at once. Outside, the neighbors continued to gather, whispering in awe. To them, it looked like a miracle unfolding in front of their eyes. The mechanic, once invisible to many, was now the center of something extraordinary. As the woman closed the folder, she looked him in the eyes and said firmly, "This is only the beginning. Tomorrow the work starts. Your kindness has been noticed, and now it's time for the world to see who you truly are." The mechanic stood still, his rag still in his hand, his clothes stained with oil, but his heart beating louder than ever. He realized that his life, which had been stuck in endless struggle, was about to change forever. The following days felt like something out of a dream for the mechanic. From the moment the woman left his garage with her team, his world no longer felt the same. True to her word, the very next morning, trucks pulled up outside his small shop. Workers began unloading new equipment, shiny toolkits, machines he had only seen in magazines, and even materials to rebuild the garage itself. The neighbors watched with wide eyes, whispering that something unbelievable was happening to the humble mechanic who had always been there for them. The mechanic stood quietly near the entrance, his heart thumping as he tried to make sense of it all. He had lived most of his life fixing cars with old tools and patching things together with whatever he could find. Suddenly, he was watching strangers carry in brand new lifts, polished tool cabinets, and powerful machines that could transform his little garage into something professional. He almost couldn't believe this was happening to him. Later that day, the black luxury car returned. The woman stepped out again, this time without the formality of assistants surrounding her. She looked at him with a warm smile, and he could see kindness behind her sharp, confident eyes. "I told you this was only the beginning," she said. "This place is going to be rebuilt. Not just for you, but for the people you've always helped." The mechanic's throat tightened with emotion. He had no words to match what he felt. "I don't know how to thank you," he whispered. "You already did," she replied softly. "That night, when you worked through the storm without asking for more, without knowing who I was, you showed me what true generosity looks like. Money can buy many things, but it cannot buy a heart like yours. This is my way of saying thank you." As the days passed, the old broken garage was slowly transformed. The cracked walls were replaced with strong new ones. The leaking roof was rebuilt, keeping the rain away for good. Bright lights lit up the space, and every corner was neatly organized with new equipment. For the first time in his life, the mechanic had a place that matched his skills, a place where he could work without struggle. But it wasn't only the garage that changed. The mechanic changed too. Word spread quickly across the town. People spoke of his honesty and kindness, and how a simple act had brought him an unimaginable reward. Customers started arriving in greater numbers, some out of curiosity, others because they wanted to support a man whose story inspired them. One evening, after the workers had finished their tasks for the day, the mechanic walked through the newly rebuilt garage. He touched the smooth surface of the new tools, listened to the hum of machines he never thought he would own, and felt tears welling up in his eyes. For so long, he had fought against life's weight with nothing but determination. And now, because of a single act of kindness, the doors of opportunity had opened wider than he ever imagined. The woman visited often, not as a powerful CEO, but as a friend. She would check on the progress, ask him how things were going, and remind him that the world noticed goodness more than people realized. Every time she stood in that garage, she looked at him with respect, not pity, because she knew his worth was far greater than money. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, he stood at the doorway of his new workshop and looked out at the street he had known all his life. Children waved as they passed, neighbors stopped to congratulate him, and cars lined up, waiting for his skilled hands. He felt something deep inside, peace, pride, and above all, gratitude. He thought about how everything had started. A rainy night, a broken car, and a choice to help without expecting anything in return. That simple decision had rewritten his entire future. He realized now that true kindness never disappears. It might take time, but it always finds a way back, often when least expected and in ways beyond imagination. As he closed the garage for the night, the mechanic whispered a quiet prayer of thanks. Not just for the wealth that had found him, but for the chance to prove that kindness could indeed change lives. His story was no longer just his own. It became a lesson for everyone who heard it. No matter how little you have, when you give with a full heart, life always finds a way to give back more than you ever dreamed.